experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. It's Monday, and we're starting off with a very, very important topic. Makes a lot of people giggle to talk about sex. But you have to remember that reproduction is the number one job of humans. Forget about Maslow's laws of hierarchy and all that sort of stuff. Our job is to make other humans and then die and clear off the planet and keep the progression of our species going. And if you're paying attention, you notice that more and more social media ads are targeting young men in their 30s, not even in their 40s yet, for erectile dysfunction products and even products that will help you go longer when having sex, because premature ejaculation is a problem. I experienced this when I was 330 pounds. I noticed that I didn't last as long anymore. And none of us really think about it, but sex is a form of endurance performance, and chances are, if you're not lasting long, your ability to endure in all aspects of exercise is probably failing. And a gentleman wrote a book about it, Dr. Jason Karp, who if there's a patron saint of running, I think he would be nominated by the Pope, because running is not only a major core of his life, but a gift to the rest of us, because he has discovered all the great things that running, and if you can't run, cycling, but this type of endurance exercise. In fact, those of you with lower back pain, if you start jogging and running, you'll find that your lower back pain goes away. Really, ambulating at high speeds makes a difference. Before we get started, we have to thank our title sponsor, Legendary Foods. We're going to be talking about their new sweet rolls very shortly, and a new addition to healthy snacking. I get a lot of beef from people saying Legendary isn't healthy snacking because they have a seed oil, but they use a very, very high oleic seed oil that has lower omega-6s than beef. And so you have to take these things in context. I know right now the big buzzword is seed oils are bad, and that's how we are. Baby talk. This is good. That's bad. When you look at things in the context, you learn more. But we're still promoting the tasty pastry, which was the Pop-Tart reimagined. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality dairy protein, 4 to 5 net carbs for low-carb people. shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Get them. Use the code SHR10 to let them know you learned about them here on the show. And share them with your kids, because they will love them. Most kids don't like healthy snacks, but this is one that they will love, I guarantee it. Okay, and now without further delay, Dr. Jason Karp, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So, you've done TED Talks about the value of running. I mean, so when did you start running?
I was in middle school, 6th grade. And
what was the event? Did the school have to start running? They were paying attention to health ed or what?
Yeah, well, I was on my middle school track team. So it actually started maybe a couple of years earlier with the presidential physical fitness test. I don't know if the listeners remember those tests.
I remember that. Yeah.
And so there were, part of the battery of tests, there were 2 running events. One was a 50-yard dash that we did in the school's parking lot, and one was a 600-yard run that we did around one of the soccer fields, the grass soccer fields. And so it was then that I discovered that I had a little bit of talent for running. And then I went out for my middle school track team.
Is that music in the background coming from outside, like somebody singing outside the
Um,
courtyard?
I don't know where that's coming from. I hear it too. I don't know where that's coming from. It just came on.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully it's a nice song. We'll do our best.
Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from.
Post COVID, all the shows we do have babies in the background and stuff because people are home. So,
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So that opened your eyes to running. But and so you did that, but how did you continue on you've done this for your entire life now, right?
Yeah. So when I was on my middle school track team, I absolutely fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the science of athletic performance. I was interested in why one person can run faster than another. And that's what put me on a road that I'm still following all these years later. And I ran in high school and college and still running 6 days a week, still competing all these years later. And I just became fascinated because it's the purest form of sport. There's nothing else involved other than just the physical act of putting one foot in front of the other. All humans evolved to run. It's a very animalistic activity, and that makes us very similar to other animals. All mammals run. That's what we evolved to do. And so, even though I've been a big fan of other sports as well, running is the most purest form of sports. There's not a whole lot of strategy involved. There's not a lot of skill compared to other sports. There's some skill, but not as much as in other sports. It's really all about the fitness, the conditioning, the physiology, the biochemistry. And so that's what makes it very exciting to me all these years later, is to understand how to train to improve performance in running.
Do you know Mark Bell?
No, I don't know if I do.
Mark is a former elite powerlifter,
Mm-hmm.
1,000-pound squatter, just a really powerful guy. And he's reinvented himself, and all he does is talk about running and kinesiology, and he's fallen in love with it, and he's ripped now and muscular because he had all that muscle under that fat.
Mm-hmm.
He's transformed himself, and he's a good friend of mine, and we communicate a lot. And he does some really cool stuff, like to activate the entire body in chains of movement.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really big on foot placement and how you push off and all that sort of stuff. Are you that deep into it as well?
Oh yeah, of course. There's the biomechanics side of running, and there's also the physiology, biochemistry, cardiovascular side of running. And it's a great blend of both. When you work on the mechanics and you work on the physiology, that's what makes runners better. Yeah.
Now, you said something, I believe it was in your TED talk, that people think that the brain, the mind, is the executive, but really the body is. Talk about
Right. Yeah, that's how we evolve. People think that the brain is controlling everything, but the body actually is the boss. The body leads the brain. If you look back at evolutionary research, it was the movement of the body and how the body interacted with its environment. That's what was the basis for the evolution of the brain. The brain had to adapt in order to be able for our bodies to move and interact with the world around us. So the body is the boss. When you look at what we have to do every single day to attend to our physical being, I talk about this a lot in the TED Talk and the book that came out right after the TED Talk, that the human experience is physical. Even though people, we hear a lot about in our society these days about working from the inside out, that we should work on our insides, we should manifest the things that we want, work on our inner selves. But I actually take the opposite approach, because the human experience and the human existence is 100% physical. It's better if we work on our bodies first, if we make our bodies strong and resilient and enduring. That changes us on the inside. There's plenty of research to show the effects of physical activity and exercise, and how there's not just physical changes that happen, there's also psychological changes and changes to your brain chemistry, which changes the way you think. And so if you train your body, that changes your brain, which affects the mind. You look at all the things that we have to do every single day to attend to our physical being. We have to sleep 8 hours every single night. We have to eat multiple times a day. We have to go to the bathroom several times a day. And then as a species, as you mentioned earlier, we have to have sex. We have to have sex to procreate and to continue the species. That's why these things are such urges. You know, it's an urge to sleep every night. It's an urge to eat. It's a very strong urge to have sex. There's a reason why those urges are so strong. And the reason is to make sure that we do it, because life is physical. And so that was the whole premise of the TED Talk, is instead of looking from the inside out, to look from the outside in and focus on the physical body first, because ultimately the body is the boss.
Yeah, and you know, we know that exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps neuronal sprouting.
Exactly.
And it's not the other way around. It's not like that happens and then you want to go and run.
Exactly.
You have to
Yeah.
run to prime that pump.
Exactly.
So why did you write the book Sexercise? And let me put it up here for people to see, because there's a link here for those of you who want to get it. I can tell you right now, this is a much better alternative to improving your sexual performance, because your health gets better with it. You know, taking Viagra or taking now there's a new drug that's really becoming popular called apomorphine, which is a dopamine stimulator that makes people have a libido. Like if you have to take drugs for these things, which are your prime motives for life, then your body's broken. You need to address that at the same time. But go to shrnetwork.biz/sexercise and you can pick up the book. So how did you come to write the book?
It's a good question. A couple of different things. With all of the books I write, I always look for, number one, what's a hole in the marketplace? What hasn't been done? I mean, there's a lot of redundancy in book publishing, you know, especially in the area of health and fitness and weight loss. And, you know, there's a million weight loss books. They all say the same thing. And so I don't like to write books like that. I like to write books that haven't been done. And then I combine where I think a hole there is in the market with my background and my expertise. And so my background is in exercise physiology. And then I combine that with my interest in sex and exercise. And so all those things together is what really drove the idea for the book, because I've always been interested in the fact that both exercise in general and running in particular and sex are perhaps the two best expressions of who we are as physical animals. And so that really is what gave me the idea to write the book, that I wanted to look at this interdependent relationship between exercise and sex and really delve into the hormonal response to both, delve into how exercise improves your sex life, because believe it or not, there's actually quite a lot of research on the effects of exercise on sexual stimulation and sexual performance. And so I wanted to put all that together in a book to describe, you know, what is this relationship between exercise and sex, and then also have fun with the book. And, you know, like the second half of the book is all about fitness sexual positions. So I had a photo shoot with a male and female model, and I came up with all these positions that require some degree of fitness, whether it's on the part of the woman or on the part of the male or on the part of both, so that people could actually have fun with it. So you learn about the science, you learn about sex and exercise from a scientific and research perspective, and then you can also have fun with it and try these sexual positions that require some degree of fitness. And so combined with those sexual fitness positions are workouts. And so you can see when you look at the book, on the right hand side is the sexual position, and the left hand side is the exercise that one would need to do to train to be able to do that position.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's the way I wanted to set it up. So yeah, it's cool that you can either do these exercises, standalone exercises, or you can put them all together and create workouts out of them, so you can have fun with it.
They used to say when I was young, if sex is hard work, if you're doing it right.
Exactly.
So Craig Hollander makes a point, and this is really kind of a horse and carriage type of a question. Some people can't, they're not motivated. They're stuck. Their mind is stuck. And I've had to deal with this because I live with a great deal of chronic pain. Sometimes you just don't feel like you can do it, or the premise of doing something like running is painful, so you shut it down. How do you kind of prime the pump if you're not motivated to start? And slowly you will become motivated because you'll feel better and you'll look different.
Right.
And so on. How do you when you work with somebody who goes like, I just don't want to run, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the way I've always approached it, I guess this is one of the different ways that I think about motivation compared to other people, that you have to ask yourself why you're not motivated. And the reason why you're not motivated is because you don't really want to do it. It's very easy to motivate yourself to do something you want to do. And so the question is not really one of motivation, it's really a matter of want. And what I usually tell people is that it's almost as if you have an obligation to exercise, because that is who you are as a physical animal. You know, all animals exercise in some way, they all run. And so not moving is not being the animal that you are. You know, we have to live to survive. And I talk about this in the book, that, you know, both exercise and sex are important for survival. They're imperative for human survival. You know, the lack of exercise or the lack of sex hurts you as an animal. It hurts you as a human. And we see that every day with all the illness that takes place, the obesity and all the orthopedic issues and everything that happens when people are sedentary. And so, you know, not to quote a big brand here, but I think out of all the slogans of all the brands, I think Nike really has the best slogan that has ever been created by any brand of any type, and that is "Just do it." You just have to turn the mind off and think, well, I don't. You know, the thing is, you don't need to motivate yourself to go and do it. Just physically get outside the door, and if it's not running, then start walking. Every human being can walk, with certain rare exceptions, people who are in wheelchairs and things like that. But even people in wheelchairs can exercise. You know, we see people in wheelchairs doing marathons and triathlons, and so it is possible for every human to exercise in some form. If people can't physically run, well, then you can walk. And then maybe you can mix walking and running. So maybe you walk for 5 minutes and run for 1 minute, and then walk for 5 minutes and run for 1 minute. You do that for 30 minutes. And so, you know, the whole issue of the mind with me and the motivation thing, you know, that does come secondary. You just have to get out the door and do it, and forget about, oh, I need to motivate myself to do it. Just do it. Just open the freaking door and walk out the door. And then as you become more fit and it becomes more enjoyable, you know, then your mind will follow suit. Your mind will adapt.
It's funny because when I was a fat bastard, I started by walking. I had my sneakers out so I wouldn't take a pause and think, well, maybe I won't do it today. I did that the night before. I got up, I put my sneakers on, and obviously my whatever I was going to walk in. I walked out the door, and I walked for 10 minutes in one direction, and then I walked 10 minutes back, and then I got the kids ready for school. And like, you're right. Um, I think that people have to start where they are. I say this on the show all the time. Like, if all you can do is stand in between the commercials of your
Right.
favorite TV shows, then start there. Then progress to walking around the sofa during the commercials,
Right.
and then, you know, slowly. And progression is the key, no matter what it is, whether it's weightlifting, Olympic lifting, running, whatever it is, the progression. You just have to keep progressing. You have to keep setting your sights on what the next level of progression is, and then all of a sudden, a year goes by, and you're running a mile, and you never thought you could.
Exactly.
The
It's all
body
about
works.
creating the habit.
But I think the concern for people older, like myself, who aren't in good shape, they believe that they can't recover anymore, that they're going to make inroads
Mhm.
into damaging their body, as opposed to realizing that the body's going to super compensate for what they're doing. Do you see
Exactly.
people that they try, but they just never can do it because their bodies are too broken?
Very, very few people, like people who are, you know, maybe in wheelchairs, who have had strokes or things like, you know, some kind of illness or an accident or something. But yeah, in very rare exceptions, you know, people with ALS who physically can't move, you know, there are very rare exceptions, because, you know, like I said before, and I probably will be saying this the rest of my career, you know, people tend to forget that human beings are animals. We are more similar to your pet dog than you are to anything else. I mean, you know, people like to see themselves somehow different from their pets. The dog goes out and runs and fetches the toy, but humans don't do that. Well, of course humans do that because we are very similar to the dog or to the cat or to all these other animals.
Right.
And so I think if people start seeing themselves as who they really are as animals, then they don't have a problem motivating themselves to exercise because they realize that that is who they are. And the human existence is physical. I mean, you can't get away with that. I mean, you can't get away from that concept. Every single thing we do, every single day is physical. And so
I remember
attend to that.
I was going to say, I remember watching a documentary once that came up with formulary that they could predict how much longer you're going to live by the speed in which you naturally walk and your gait.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, if that means that if you improve the speed in which you walk and improve your gait, then you're probably going to live longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's a distiller. It's distilled from your physical attributes and how you are, how healthy you are.
Yeah, your amount of oxygen consumption, your VO2 max, is a great predictor of mortality, your aerobic fitness, and so that's what's tied into that. The speed at which you can walk, that is tied into your body's ability to consume and utilize oxygen. And so, yeah, that is huge. So
I'm sorry, go ahead. Keep
I
going.
was just going to say that, like older people who are very frail, their VO2, their amount of oxygen they can consume is very, very low. And the lower it gets, the closer you will be. The closer your VO2 max gets to your normal resting metabolic rate, the closer you are to death.
So Bob Burke makes a point, and this is perfect timing. We did a show about a study earlier this year that shows that heavy resistance training is better at increasing VO2 max than running endlessly. And VO2 max, from this study, we learned that VO2 max has a lot to do with the efficiency of muscle to utilize oxygen. It's not a function of the cardiorespiratory or system. It's more a function of the efficiency of muscle to use less oxygen, and that comes from building denser muscle tissue, which is counterintuitive, right? You think more muscle tissue, you're going to gobble up oxygen faster. And then Bob Burke says here that he's done high-level powerlifting and high-level distance running, and powerlifting has more technique, but both are pure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and the other thing is, powerlifters believe that running is going to make them weaker, and they both coexist perfectly. In fact, I would argue that you can be stronger if you are more cardiovascularly trained because of the VO2 max paradigm, in my humble opinion. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it will improve your endurance. I mean, there are some incompatibilities about gaining maximal strength and maximal endurance because the adaptations to both are quite different. But going back to the VO2 max, so there are two major components to the VO2 max. One is indeed cardiovascular, the maximum stroke volume, the maximum cardiac output. And then the other is what's happening inside the muscle's ability to extract oxygen from the blood. And that has a lot to do with the amount of mitochondria you have, the capillary density around the muscle fibers, the amount of aerobic enzyme activity, all of that stuff that's happening inside the muscle. But yeah, improving your cardiovascular endurance can help with all other kinds of physical activity. And that's why the VO2 max has pretty much been the gold standard of aerobic fitness.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older and you tend to lose muscle mass, and the strength training, especially the heavy strength training, becomes equally, if not even more important, especially for women after they go through menopause. It's very important for bone density and muscle mass and just function. You look at how many older people have trouble getting out of a chair. They can't even do one single squat to pull themselves out of a chair. So the strength training, the power training is very important as people age.
So have people reached out to you after reading the book Sexercise and validated that, wow, I'm a rock star in bed now?
Oh yeah, all the time. People are always telling me stories about how exercise improves their sex life, and it's interesting because there's two major ways it does that. One is the physiological way, the enhanced blood flow and things like that, and but then the other one is psychological because when you look good, you feel good, and it gives you more confidence both inside and outside the bedroom. And so a lot of people are self-conscious, especially women. They're self-conscious, and they may not want their partner to see themselves naked. And it's a very vulnerable thing to have somebody see you naked, especially when you're not confident about what you look like naked.
Mm-hmm.
And so exercise can give people that confidence, which then makes them feel more sexy and it makes them perform better.
So anxiety. So there's lots of forms of erectile dysfunction. Some of the idiopathic forms of erectile dysfunction are related to anxiety in men. They get older, they start contemplating death. They contemplate I'm worried about having a heart attack. And as a result of that, when it comes time to perform in bed, the anxiety hormones rise. And from an evolutionary perspective, you're not supposed to be having sex when you're freaked out. Like your body shuts all that stuff off. And these men can be tested. They put a paper band around their penis at night to see if they're experiencing nocturnal tumescent erections, which is the penis's maintenance that it does in the middle of the night. You wake up with an erection. Sometimes it's closer to the morning, depending on when the pulse of testosterone occurs. And if you break the paper and that means you had somewhat of a rigid erection, then you don't have true ED. It very well could be anxiety related. And instead of taking lorazepam or some benzodiazepine before making love, which makes you tired, by improving your cardiovascular conditioning, that's been shown in numerous studies to completely obliterate anxiety in older men.
Yeah,
so there you
fascinating.
There you go.
It's fascinating because the effects of exercise are not just physical. There's a lot of psychological and brain chemistry changes that happen. And so that's why exercise is the best aphrodisiac.
I want to put this back up. The book is called Sexercise, Exercising Your Way to Better Sex. Every man should have this book. I mean it, really. And guys are having these problems at 35 at much younger ages for whatever reason. This is a really great tool that you won't have to take drugs and other stuff and you have to depend on. Is the pill going to work tonight? That causes anxiety in men. Is the pill going to work tonight? Go to shrnetwork.biz/sexercise and pick the book up for you and maybe your father too. Who knows? Maybe that's something you guys can talk about. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Dr. Karp's work. Stay tuned. We shall return.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, cheesecake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. There have been no real breakthroughs in resistance training for over 200 years. Whether it's pulleys or free weight, they all depend on gravity and the angles associated with gravity's effect directly on the weight. All of that has changed with the ARX machine. ARX stands for adaptive resistance. The ARX machine uses a 25 horsepower motor. You are literally fighting against a 25 horsepower motor, so every single rep is your 1 rep maximum at that moment in time. But ARX leverages another technique that has been known to produce rapid muscle gains and strength, and that is it leverages the eccentric or negative portion of the rep, which completely blows every other exercise and resistance training product out of the water. Go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX and discover the future of resistance training. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
We'll be right back with Dr. Jason Karp. So it's been a bit over 2 years that I announced that I was starting Gun Leash when I thought I lost my everyday carry handgun out in the world, actually in a public restroom. It turns out that this is one of the hot spots where people lose their guns. And I set out because I realized research shows that over 500,000 guns a year are lost out in the world. That's a staggering number, especially when you realize that 15% of them are used in the commissions of crimes. And legislators in states are now looking at, if you lose your gun and it's used in the commission of a crime, you will be culpable. You'll be named in some sort of a suit, which means now the liability to people who carry guns is becoming serious. 275.1 million Americans own handguns, and we don't know how many are carrying them because now with the new constitutional carry laws, they're not required to have permits like I've always had. I've had a permit. I've had to be tested with my gun. But now anybody can just buy a gun. You pass a federal background check and you can start carrying it. And as a result of that, we are seeing more and more handguns lost. That's where Gun Leash comes in. I'm going to market with this product in December. And right now we have an angel fund round. We're only going to do this for a little while because we're going to probably go to a crowd funding platform to finish it up because I don't really want to give a lot of the equity away in the company. But I have 2 Silicon Valley big shots working with me on this project, and they told me that this has the potential to be bigger than GoPro. And if any of you are investors, you know that GoPro was what they call a unicorn because it actually earned over $1 billion in revenue on its 9th year. Gun Leash is a stamp-sized electronic device, which is a first of its kind. It's the smallest of its type, and it's very, very, very sophisticated. As you can see from the picture there, it's smaller than a dime, and it does not track your gun. People who are into guns are like, I don't want my gun tracked. This doesn't track your gun. It's a simple proximity device. It only knows if your gun is within 10 feet of your body. Once your gun gets out of 10 feet, the alarm goes off, and hopefully you're still close enough to just walk back and retrieve it. But this is not just a toy. if we can cut back on the number of lost guns every single year, and I've been told by federal agents that most guns are not reported stolen, lost, because the people don't want the responsibility of having to explain why or how they lost their gun. This is going to be a huge, huge opportunity, and we are still taking investors. And if you're interested in learning more, email me at onair@superhumanradio.net, and I'll set up a presentation. It takes 15, 20 minutes to do a presentation. And then you can make a decision whether or not you think you want to be involved with a device that's truly going to improve the safety and security of ownership of guns moving forward. So there you go. That's that. Now, let me bring my guest back on. And here comes. Welcome back.
Thanks.
You've written what, 13 books now about running?
Correct. Well, not all about running, but all about fitness and weight loss and running and sex. Yes. 13.
And so when you say not just about running, but fitness and weight loss, how else can you become fit if you don't run?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, I'm biased to the running, but like one of the books is on the research of the National Weight Control Registry to look at the habits of successful weight losers. So that's called Lose It Forever. So even though there's bits and pieces of running contained in the book was more about, looking at the research from the National Weight Control Registry to find out people who have lost weight and kept it off, what are they doing? Because with all the weight loss books on the market, we still have a problem of people gaining the weight back. And so I was shocked to find out that no one has written a book that has actually looked at, well, what are the habits of the people who have lost weight and kept it off? And there's actually a registry of people. It's over 10,000 people at this point. It was started in 1994 by 2 college professors because they wanted to document that as well. What are these people doing? So we actually know how many calories these people eat every day, how much carbohydrate, protein, fat they eat, what their exercise habits are, what their other habits are. And it turns out that there are 6 habits that these people do that has enabled them to keep the weight off. And so that's a very interesting book too, because that hasn't been documented in the book before. There's a lot of research that people are so unaware of, and it's a shame that it takes a long time, if ever, for the academic research to trickle into the general population. So that's where I come in. That's what my books serve to do. I want to bridge that gap between what happens in academia and what is said and told in the general public and on social media. I mean, it's a shame that people get their information these days from social media. Everyone's a self-proclaimed expert, yet they've never taken a college course in their lives on the subject that they're speaking about. And so I try to bridge that gap and bring the academic research into the general public and do it in such a way that holds their attention and makes the book entertaining to read.
So while you were saying that, I'm thinking, but there has to be one salient characteristic, because regardless of what dietary template you decide to follow or exercise approach or improve your sleep, these are all upheavals of an intact lifestyle. I mean, I didn't get to be 330 pounds by doing something inconsistently. I did the things that made me fat consistently day in and day out.
Correct.
And for me, I can pinpoint it. So for me, I had a heart problem. I realized my heart was broken. I was 39 years old. And I started to look for ways to remodel my heart. And that word led me to heart research, right? Cardiac remodeling. But for me, that wasn't enough. What I hitched my wagon to was I became fascinated with strength. So the daily impetus to train was to get stronger. And I could see that week in and week out, those progressions.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look at what my body was going to look like, or what I just knew instinctively I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to become muscular by the end of this. But the gratification of finding out how strong I was, you know, at my best, I squatted 740. That's not average human being, weight. That's like a more of a stepping into an elite class. And those were my goals. So would you say that you discovered when you did this research that all of these people who were able to stick with it had some sort of goal that wasn't necessarily just losing weight or just becoming fit?
No, it's a good question. For some of them, it is just that, because they, like, I also interviewed people who were in the registry in the book. And so each chapter of the book is framed by a story of someone in the registry. And listening to their stories, they have different motivations. Some of them, one person told me that she went to a high school reunion and pictures were taken, and she saw herself in the pictures and she didn't like what she saw. And she realized then that she needed to make a change. And for some other people, it's a health issue, that they realize that if they don't lose weight, then they're sacrificing their health and that they may die. And so, people have different reasons for wanting to make the change. For some people, it is purely cosmetic. And for others, they have a goal that they want to achieve something. And the way they look is just the byproduct of getting more fit. So it all depends on the person and what their initial reason is for wanting to lose weight. For a lot of people, it is purely cosmetic, and that's fine. I mean, we live in a society,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And social media really throws this in our faces these days, that what we look like matters. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it's because life is physical, and that's why we put so much emphasis on what we look like, because it does matter. Because we're not just a bunch of molecules floating around the sky talking to each other through sound wave. Life is physical, and so we do care about what we look like, and we care about what other people think that we look like, even if we tell ourselves something different. So that's a perfectly okay motivation to want to lose weight, simply because you want to look better. I mean, for me, I've always been of the opinion that it doesn't matter what the muscles look like, it matters what they can do, because I've always come from an athletic perspective. I've never been overweight myself, and I've always been an athlete. And so for me, sure, I want to look good, but for me, it's all about the performance. If I can run faster, I don't care so much. I would in a second look like a scrawny Kenyan runner if it meant I could run as fast as they could.
Right.
And so for me, the looks have always come second. I've always been more interested in the performance. But for plenty of other people, the looks are the motivating factor, and that's perfectly okay. Whatever gets you out the door to do it.
During my divorce, I harnessed anger and made some of my greatest gains in the gym. I really did. And I'm not ashamed to say it. It's like, if you can't find the motivation in how you feel when people make fun of you and harness that. I mean, millions and millions of athletes have started that way.
Yeah, exactly.
My friend Porter Cottrell, he was an Olympian, and he was flat-footed when he was young, and he was little, and he felt bad about himself. And he, it's that that old comic book cover, right? The inside of the comic book where the guy kicks sand in the scrawny guy's face and takes the girl away. And then the guy comes back next year and he's all muscular and he knocks the guy down. But, really, that's a raw assessment of what it takes to motivate people sometimes.
Exactly, yeah. We all want to feel like we belong. We all, especially when we're younger, we have the peer pressure, and we all want to be part of the group. It makes us feel good. And so that's one of the major reasons why people go out for sports when they're younger, whether they do a league or they do it in school, because people want to feel like they belong to something, and it's a good feeling, and sports are a great avenue for that.
We have to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want to plug your website, because people can go to your website and see all of your books, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's do this. Last break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feel free and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Jason Karp. We're talking about running, we're talking about fitness, and we're talking about how to improve your ability to have better sex. Is this true of women too, Dr. Karp? Or is it just a man thing?
Oh, no, it's very true for women. There's actually been a lot of interesting research that takes women to, they have them watch exotic videos and then measure their sexual stimulation.
Yeah.
So, they'll have them exercise. So they'll have 2 conditions. So have a group watch sexual videos and they measure things like vaginal pulse amplitude, vaginal blood flow. And then they do that with and without an exercise intervention just prior to watching the exotic video. And so it's very interesting research. A lot of that is done at University of Texas at Austin by a researcher named Cindy Meston. She's one of the foremost researchers in this area of looking at the effects of exercise on sexual stimulation in women. And fascinating research to show that it seems that 15 minutes is the magic time to have exercise, and the 15-minute window between exercise and sex, that you're more responsive to sexual stimulation 15 minutes after an intense workout. That's the best time to hit the sheets.
So there's a phenomenon in older adults that's just classified as neuropathy. It's this blanket term, which basically means the peripheral nerves of the body start to malfunction. And there's lots of emerging evidence that it's not from blood sugar levels being high. Originally, it was thought to be glycation that led to demyelination. But now we see people who've never had type 2 diabetes, relatively thin, starting to develop peripheral neuropathies. And some of the emerging research shows that this is more a phenomenon that starts with vasculature malfunctions. And it could be thought of like if you're a farmer and you have 100 acres and your irrigation system covers the whole 100 acres and you can plant on the whole 100 acres. But as time goes on, the irrigation system further away from the farmhouse starts to malfunction. And it's not delivering water out there, and everything you plant out there just dies because it's not getting water. And you can think of your blood flow and your peripheral system, blood system, like that irrigation system. And what we're learning now is that as those small blood vessels shut down, they stop feeding the nerves. And what we're really experiencing is more a phenomenon of hyperalgesia. Like if you sat on your leg when you were a kid for a movie and you stood up and your leg fell asleep, and then it has different grades of sensation. Some feel like pain, stinging, and then it wakes up and it feels normal again. But those nerves are stuck in that limbo. And so you have this sensation that's like burning. It's really not true numbness, and it's called hyperalgesia. The reason I'm discussing this phenomenon is because nothing improves vascular density more than walking or running for an hour. An hour is the magic number, ironically. But when you run, jog, or walk, and you get to that 1 hour magic point, all these blood vessels, they open up and they allow blood in, and you'll like, and I've noticed this because I had some neuropathy. I just still do, but when I walk for an hour, I feel like there's worms in my sneakers because the blood is opening up and it's feeding those nerves again. It's a phenomenon. So many people could literally reduce the discomfort from these neuropathies by walking a mile with regularity. And at some point in time, the vasculature stays open. It doesn't close back up again. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, it's huge that aerobic exercise in general and running in particular causes what's called angiogenesis, which is a fancy word for the formation of new blood vessels. And so, yeah, everything you just said was exactly right. That when you run, you get more blood vessels. You have the sprouting of new branches from the existing blood vessels, and you get new blood vessels that pop up. And it's all because of you can think of it as supply and demand. If you increase the demand, you need the demand for oxygen, then our bodies will enhance the supply. And it does that by sprouting new blood vessels around the muscle fibers, around your other organs that need the extra oxygen to meet the demand that you're placing on your body, because running or any type of exercise is a demand. If you need more oxygen, our bodies will do what's necessary to deliver more oxygen. So yeah, it starts with, as we said before, it starts with the body. It starts with the exercise. Mm-hmm. Running is perhaps the single best stimulus for this angiogenesis to occur.
Yeah, fascinating. So plug your website. The website people can go to is jasonkarp.com. Is that right?
It's drjasonkarp.com.
Dr. DR or Doc?
Yeah, DR. Yeah.
drjasonkarp.com. drjasonkarp.com. For those of you driving in your car and listening right now, it's been great to have you on. Fascinating. I really admire your singular focus on this. I mean, a lot of people jump around because they want to come up with new book ideas, but you really pretty much looked at cardiovascular conditioning and the way to train for it, because it's spot on, because it actually has an effect on our entire body. And just so people realize, exercise is an artificial replacement for what we used to do naturally. We have to exercise now because we don't work hard anymore. We have to lift weights because we don't move boulders out of the way anymore. So, we have to emulate the things that we were designed to do. Otherwise, we get sick. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The lack of exercise actually hurts you. Not doing it hurts you.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Karp.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Take care. And we will see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Don't forget, share this show. You never know whose life you will change by sharing a single show. And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.